Hey everyone, Metagross Freak here, and obviously the content of this video is going to contain spoilers for the latest Steven Bomb. If you haven't watched it yet, you should. It's gonna come out. Technically, it's gonna air in next week, but it's been out for like 3 weeks right now. So if you haven't seen it, watch it. I had the flu, and I still saw it on January 2nd, when basically the entire internet aired it. So that being said, uh, this is my thoughts on the gem hierarchy based on what we know so far. So obviously, we have the Diamond Authority, boom, at the top. We have other aristocracy, like Sapphires, next. And we know that Sapphire is basically the next rank of the gems types we know because of how Blue Agate treats her. And of course, next up we have the agates, and this is kind of confirmed in the song "What's the Use of Feeling Blue," when Yellow Diamond says an agate terrifies. Um, that basically the point of an agate is to keep other gems in line for the diamond or for whoever that agate's commanding officer is. Maybe it's a sapphire or equivalent. Um, and Holly Blue Agate, which is the only agate type we've seen so far, yeah, we can kind of confirm that she basically her job is to kind of be like the wrangler for Pink Diamond's quartzes. And next up, we have, of course, in at least military wise, we have the quartzes, and we have seen multiple types of quartzes now. We have seen amethyst, jasper, rose quartz, of course, and the newest one that we saw from the newest one was added in this Steven Bomb, which was carnelian. We get to see actually two different types of carnelians. Two carnelians. We see one carnelian that's, of course, presented the most obviously, which is the one that's slightly taller than amethyst, like 2 inches taller. And then we see a like jasper sized, or standard quartz sized carnelian. In the in the next few seconds when all the quartzes are going out. And of course, there's also a subclass of quartz, which is Steven, who is I guess half quartz because he's a half gem. Though I'll get to that in a second. But based on how Holly Blue treats the quartzes, now this could just be because she's bitch, but she treats them as if there's different classes of quartz, or at least how some quartzes aren't as good as others, and this is because she refers to one of the jaspers as an off-color beta, but she basically tells the all the amethysts to basically get their crap together. And she in a very demeaning in an even more demeaning voice says, "Even you off-color betas, I don't know why they kept you around," kind of thing, because you're like not perfect. And this kind of confirms what we know from the episode Beta, where Peridot implies that basically everything that doesn't come from the prime kindergarten is essentially substandard because of the materials it's made of. So basically, like amethysts and rose quartzes are like the higher quality quartzes, meanwhile, jaspers and carnelians are kind of that lower quality quartz, just because of what they're made of, though they seem to have the same rank as a higher brutish soldier. Um, However, we know that Steven would be on the gem hierarchy a lower rank. One, because he's technically a fusion, and Homeworld doesn't like fusion unless it's between two gems of the same type, but also because of how she refers to amethyst. Um, Peridot says in, I don't remember what the episode is, but joke too far. I think it's like one too far or a joke too far. The one where she's making jokes. The one where Peridot's making jokes about everyone. Rhythmatic pulverizer. That episode. You know, says that Amethyst is the higher ranking member of her team because Garnet is a fusion, and of course Homeworld looks down on different gem fusions. Though it also could be that Peridot doesn't realize that Sapphire is that Garnet has a Sapphire in her. This could also be because remember that that Garnet says that sapphires are rare, are rare member of the aristocracy, so it could just be that Peridot's never seen or met a Sapphire, doesn't know how high ranking they are, or it could be that Sapphire's nobility is negated because she's in a fusion. We also know that, based on just back at the barn, that pearls are essentially the bottom of the hierarchy. And she says that she's not even basically she's not even sure if Stephen even counts because he's a hybrid. And in Peridot and when it rains, Peridot seems a little confused and seems a little like almost kind of concerned when Peridot finds out that Stephen is a hybrid of a Rose Quartz and Greg. So this would imply that because if Amethyst is the highest ranking member of the team, then this would imply that Stephen, being only half of a Rose Quartz, or at least a half gem, is kind of below that ranking. Anyway, I need to get on. I've been talking about Stephen way too much. So we talked about basically the the aristocracy and military side. Now we're talking about the kind of the civil side. We have, of course, lapis lazulis, peridots, whatever the heck centipedal is supposed to be, and bismuth. And we know from Monster Buddies, no, Monster Reunion, sorry, Monster Reunion, that Centipedal and her crew are basically designed, or basically had the purpose of working on creating the colony. However, were basically forced to become foot soldiers similar to Ruby's once the war broke out. So I would take this to mean that if they're basically just construction workers that became foot soldiers, they're probably along the same lateral hierarchy as a Ruby soldier, which of course are the basic foot soldiers. However, above whatever the heck Centipedal is supposed to be, I would put gems. I would put bismuth and lapis lazuli. And we know from What's the Use of Feeling Blue that lapis is designed to terraform a planet, while a bismuth, based on what we know from the two-parter Bismuth, is essentially the construction is not kind of like a higher ranking construction gem. But we know from Bismuth's abilities that Bismuth, yes, could do construction, but also their point is also to take raw materials and forge them into materials to build with. Meanwhile, a lapis could do something like either flatten land for a structure, turn like flat land into like a mountain to put a structure on top of, or even say like just bring raw materials to a bismuth to work with. So I would say they're probably in the same. I would say lapis and bismuth are in that same tier, above like what, for example, a ruby and a centipedal would be, but of course below the quartzes. And it's kind of unclear where Peridot would be. Peridot seems to have the role of kind of a civil engineer or like a technical engineer. Of course, the Peridot we see, Facet 5, Cut, whatever, our Peridot seems to have the role of like a technical engineer. She is a licensed kindergartner. However, not all Peridots, I'm sure, are kindergarteners. I'm sure some do things like make blueprints and make sure things are running smoothly, like electrical engineers, stuff like that. Basically, Peridots are the engineers, from what we've seen. So I'm sure they fit somewhere in between, like the whole, like it could probably either lateral to bismuth or possibly a little bit below. Peridot treats Lapis Lazuli as if she's an equal, even just right from the get-go, especially when Lapis Lazuli decides to stay on Earth. And Peridot is just kind of like, Lazuli, good to see you up and about. Just like kind of treats her. I mean, obviously Peridot's trying to redefine herself, but also she just kind of treats her as if they're equals, as if they're a friend, as opposed to right from the get-go when she treated Pearl as if she was subservient to her. So I would say Peridot is probably around the same ranking as a Lapis, um, which, seems fair enough. And of course, now that Peridot's homeworld conditioning is kind of worn off and she treats Pearl as being an equal, she treats Garnet as an equal, regardless of how that tier would work anyway, she now treats Lapis basically as her best friend. Well, other than Amethyst and Steven, of course. Um, and so at the very bottom, of course, we have pearls, and this also supports my theory on Peridot as well, because both Peridot seems amused by the concept of a Peridot owning a pearl. Meanwhile, Eyeball, one of the rubies in the Ruby Squad, seems amused by the idea of a ruby owning a pearl. And both of it kind of in the idea of, like, for example, if you went up to a random construction worker and you said, hey, that's a nice high rise you're building. So, what do you think about if I just, gave you a butler? They'd probably laugh at your face. If you went over to, you know, any random, like a random, like, if you went up to, like, just any, like, not even a captain, but like just kind of like a low level soldier, like a private in the army, or just like, hey, would you like a butler? They'd be like, I can't afford that. So it's kind of that same idea. So I would say that at worst, Peridot is equivalent to like the um, equivalent to a ruby centipedal, and at best is equivalent to a bismuth or lapis. Anyway, and that's just because of their how they would react with a pearl. And of course, unfortunately, pearls, from what we know so far, at the bottom of the gem hierarchy, basically being talking furniture, or kind of being like a remote, like a long distance remote control kind of. Um, Peridot describes them as basically standing around for you and holding things, which could probably explain then why Pearl's able to store like caution tape and all these things inside her gem. Um, of course, this kind of begs the question: what about Lion? Lion has tons of stuff stored in the dimension in his main, so it could be maybe that Lion is Pink Pearl. I'm kind of in support of that idea, though I don't want to get in a discussion about what exactly Lion is. However, based on just what we've seen, that is what I believe the current gem hierarchy to be. However, once we learn more about the types of gems the corrupted gems are, we'll be able to learn more. For example, in Beach Party, the corrupted gem that was the pufferfish is a watermelon tourmaline. And so, based on the type of gem, we can try to fill in a few things, though it's difficult considering a lot of gems that are corrupted just kind of look like regular gems. So hopefully we'll find out more in coming episodes. Until next time, I'm Metagross Freak, and I hope to hear from you.